What do you think makes winemaker of the year?
I'm not sure, really. I will say I love what I do.
Yeah.
I still love what I do. There's never a wine that goes out the door that we're not proud of. So we will just keep working and we will just keep at something. And I still learn and I still every year become very nervous in December, January.
Today, we're privileged to chat to the 2025 Halliday Winemaker of the Year, Liz Silkman. I'm Jason.
And I'm Trent, and we're here on an unapologetically unprofessional, unfiltered wine journey. And we're saying here, Jace.
Our saying is drink more, try more, learn more. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Liz, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And
always
congratulations on such a great win. It's a first for Hunter Valley. Obviously a first for you, but it's huge. How do you feel?
Overwhelmed, slightly humbled by it all. I guess, you always think the things you work towards and things you might attain, but actually Halliday Winemaker was actually never on the radar. I thought, it just had never come to the Hunter before, and I probably didn't think it would be me. But look, I'm going to take it, and I'm going to go with it. So it's lovely, and it's lovely recognition for a lot of work. So it's great.
Absolutely. And I don't know, I heard the news and I felt a sense of pride for you, for Hunter, for New South Wales. It was a great thing.
It is, yes.
And we're going to dive into that. I think you've got quite a few accolades. We're going to dive into Silkman wine as well. But before we do that, we're going to do the wind-up icebreaker questions. I'll hand over to Trent.
First, I'm slightly nervous.
It was
These are
easy. It's more kind of pick your brain, understand a bit about you. Most memorable wine?
Oh, I find this really hard because I think there's so many. I remember in my Evans tutorial day of doing that we had a 29 Lafite, and that was a wine obviously we'll never ever see again in my lifetime. The other weekend at one of my dearest friends' 51st birthday parties, we had a Bouchard Chevalier, and I thought that was just 2019, I think it was, and it was scrumptious. So I guess over the years I've tried a lot of wines. That might sound really wanky, might it? But
it's part of the job, bud.
It is part of the job,
want to,
and I've been really privileged in my time here in the Hunter. I came up under the Evans time, so I was probably the last of the, I was the baby of that group, but we drank wines that, blow your mind sort of thing, and, DRCs and things you get to see that are amazing. But I think it's more, as I said, the other Friday night at a friend's place, drinking great Chardonnay was fab. So, yeah.
Great Australian Chardonnay?
Oh, Great Australian Chardonnay. My favourite, I have lots of favourites of Chardonnay. I love the Heytesbury.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a favourite. It's,
nice.
The go-to sort of wine. If, if I was at a wine, at a restaurant and saw a wine list and they had the Heytesbury, I was like, yep, done. I don't have to think anymore. I know it'll be great. And
So very privileged to have a lot of wines. Is there still wines that you still wanted to try?
I like to see all the different vintage wines come through. I think it's lovely. I like to see all of what 1 year looks like and then what the next year looks like. So it wouldn't be so much that I want to try a specific wine. I guess over my life I have tried some of the top ends and most of them. And so no, it's probably just to see what those next vintage wines will look like and, what's the next thing that's going to come out and be enjoyable.
Next one, a person that you would love to have a bottle of wine with, either past or present.
Right at this moment in time, in how busy life is, it would be my best friend. I think we haven't seen each other in months and we just lead both very busy lives. She lives 30 minutes away. I spoke to her this morning for, 20 minutes while she was shopping for a dress and I'm like, okay, well, you go and I'll talk to you, I guess, when, we're 78 and retired or something. So if I could carve out, half an hour of my life, I would go and see her.
That's beautiful. Next one, unique food and wine pairings.
Oh, so yesterday I ate the best thing I have ever eaten in my life at St. Peter's.
Yes.
Oh, my Lord. It was this garfish.
Yeah.
And there's photos of it on the Instagram, I think, at the moment. So it's this, they'd salted it and they told us everything they did to it. I was just blown away. It was, and that went with we did Gruner and Vermentino. And I thought with the Gruner, it was just, I think it's the best thing I've ever eaten in my life. It was it was crazy. Like, you sort of looked at it and thought, oh, this will be nice. Yeah, it's nice. But it was way more than nice. So I was like.
So garfish with a Gruner or a Vermentino.
Yes. Yeah. I thought it was, I don't know if that's weird, or if it's, peculiar, but it was the best pairing I have seen in a long time. Yeah. So.
After a lot of pairings.
A lot of pairings. And I think we'd been on the, yes, but this was just mind-blowing.
Okay. Next one. Obviously, people are now looking towards you as, best winemaker in the world.
It's a bit weird.
what advice would you give to kind of up-and-coming winemakers or people entering the wine journey?
Work really hard. And I think a lot of young winemakers at the moment want to come in being a winemaker, and I couldn't strongly tell them to not do that enough. I think don't come in being a winemaker, come in being a cellar hand, and come in being an assistant winemaker and do that and learn. And, you go places. In my early career, I did the whole, you go to the Northern Hemisphere into vintage, to the Southern and move around. And I still look back at that. And don't get me wrong, some of the things you might learn and go, I'm never going to do that when I get to make the decisions. But that's also a learning thing where you go, that is, wow, wrong. Or I just think to make a depth of wine, you have to see what so many other people have done. And my thing to a lot of young people is take the cellar hand job and take it in a lot of places and go elsewhere and, learn from different regions. And I think, we always talk when, South Australia gets a lot of rain, a lot of those amazing winemakers, they don't struggle with the rain that we have in the Hunter. So you go different places and you learn different things, and then you can bring it all together and hopefully make really good wine.
Yeah.
But I worry about winemakers who just come in and want to be the boss from the start because your depth of knowledge isn't there.
Yeah.
And so your wines show that you don't have that depth of knowledge.
I'm getting flashbacks to like Karate Kid where like Mr. Miyagi gets people to start doing these things. Go, this is never going to apply towards anything. And then there's
but
a
it
light
does.
bulb moment going, okay.
Absolutely, yeah. And clean and more cleaning, like that's what. And I think too, when you do your time as a cellar hand and your time as an assistant in different places, and sometimes they're bigger facilities where you can learn different things, and you come to a boutique facility where you may, pick the fruit, crush the fruit, clean the toilet, ferment the wine, whatever you need to do. They're different learning things to then big company things. And for me, they both hold such value in then making you into a really good winemaker, because it's not only your wine, but it's the people you meet. Like, I think we were talking just before we started, like people that I grew up with, being cellar hands with, who are now seriously, to me, the best winemakers in Australia, like, Water and Sayers, they're the people I still ring when I go, ooh, I don't know about that. Or what do I do? Or, I want a thought, or I have a great team here that, we've made wine together, Annabelle and I, for 14, 16 years or something. So, but to have that group that you grew up with, that's such a strong, and it makes you a better winemaker.
Beautiful. That's it.
It's that circle of trust to kind of lean on for advice,
huge.
which is invaluable.
Yeah. Or I might ring up someone like Water, who has all this knowledge about, who has the opportunity, I guess, in learning, different oak and all the rest of it. I'll ring him up and I'm like, so what's a new oak I should try? And he gives me all of this information, and then he turned around and he said to me, and that's $100,000 in consultancy fees, thanks. And I was like,
I'll think about the questions I ask next time.
No, I'll just keep asking. But there's that, I think it is that knowledge and that trust where, don't get me wrong, there's probably people I've worked with that I probably would not ring up and ask there.
Yeah.
But I had this year, we were trouble finding a cellar hand or a winemaker or whatever to do night shift and drive our enormous big forklift, because we do big lots of fruit. And the gentleman who was my boss for so many years, he was the McGuigan senior winemaker, and he's retired, and this man is a machine. And so I rang him up. I said, any chance, like he's crazy, he's met Peter Hall, and I'm like, any chance you want to come and drive a forklift in the middle of the night for me? Because I'm really stuck. And he loved it. And I would arrive every morning with coffee, and he would just, and that's that circle of people who, and to have his knowledge. And I had to say to some of my younger crew, you know who he is? Like, he's not just, and they were like, no way. I was like, Like, and so I just think it keeps it all close, and you keep people that you trust close, and
And also
Makes it fun.
Also the connections and the bridges that you build as well. Like I see here in Australia, a lot of people like go overseas to vintage there. They learn from there and vice versa.
Yeah, and we always, I still love, we employ a lot of New Zealanders for harvest, and we always either have, a French sugar and Italian or, all different ones. And the things you learn from them, you can still go, yeah, right. Okay, cool.
So that was the icebreaker question. So
okay, good. Okay,
all right. We want to talk about you, and in particular, what made you decide you want to get into the wine industry? Was there a moment, or what was that influence that made you go, I want to be here?
I originally was coined, I think one of the first articles written about me was called The Accidental Winemaker. And I probably was, in a way. I grew up in the local area. I didn't have any intention of being in the industry. I have a science degree from Newcastle Uni, and I was doing cellar door work at Pepper Tree. I couldn't sell anything, so I really failed at that job, I reckon. How they didn't fire me, I don't know. But at the time, I found out that Brokenwood needed a laboratory technician. So I ended up going over there, and PJ was 2 hours late to the interview, which now I know PJ, I know that's not an unusual, thing to occur. But at the time, as a 20-year-old girl who arrived, and they're like, Ian Riggs walks out and he's like, are you sure you've got an interview? And only I'd seen his photo on the wall. I'm like, wow, you must be one of the important people. And I'm like, I was trying not to cry, going, yes, I know I have an interview, and all this anyway. So I ended up getting a job as the lab tech there. Can't say I loved it. Again, I say to my laboratory now, do as I say, don't do as I do, because I was a terrible lab technician. I was just bored. I found it was monotonous. And it's lovely in that way, you can just keep going. But I wanted to go out into the winery with the boys, and that was way more fun than what I had to do. So I used to do my lab work in the morning and the night, and I'd go and learn how to, make wine and, empty barrels, fill barrels, drive forklifts, have fun, make dry ice bombs, play water fights. It was such a great place. So started there at Brokenwood, and I think PJ realised I was getting restless. I was a bit so I ended up, he's like, right, you need to go do another vintage in another country. So he shipped me off to the States, to the most amazing place called Flowers, which is out on the Sonoma coast. And did that, and then came back, and then went to New Zealand, and then came back. And so it was this, moving around, and I look now at honing a craft at going, oh, that's what they do, or that's what happens when that fruit looks like that, or so it was an accidental thing. It wasn't like I went as a really young person, or my family are in the industry. My mum and dad are not in the wine industry. I then realised I hit a point where I wasn't getting jobs other people were, and I thought, okay, time for a degree. I already had a science degree, so I then just went and tacked on the winemaking in Adelaide, and then I went to Tempest 2. And sort of went from there. So I met Lisa and McGuigan and Sarah Kate Deneen, and, the world just became better. So, it was a fabulous place.
It seems like a spectacular journey, but now looking back and speaking to a 20-year-old Liz Silkman, what would you kind of say to her?
Don't think you know everything when you're 20. I look back and go, wow, okay. I think a lot of people like that. But I do. But no, I don't know if I'd really change much. I loved my journey. I love being in the cellar, my best days, and they still are, even, at 46, if you let me, I would just go and fill barrels, and I would go and filter wine and do that. I think they're the really good days. Make sure the budget's going to, come to fruition. Probably not the highlight of my, my job, but now where I sit, that's a lot of what I do. So, yeah. I
know you're quite humble, but Winemaker of the Year, what do you think makes Winemaker of the Year?
I don't know. I'm not sure, really. I will say Annabelle and I there's never a wine that goes out the door that we're not proud of. So we will just keep working, and we will just keep at something. And I still learn, and I still every year become very nervous in December, January. I don't take for granted that picking decision. I don't take for granted all the work that someone puts into getting that fruit in a position where I then can say, well, I think that's ready to pick. I'm not a winemaker that thinks I'm a viticulturalist. I leave that very much to the viticulturists. to the point that I still ring Liz Riley, who is the best viticulturalist I know, and I'll say to her, okay, so what is this? And I'll take photos and she'll say to me, oh, that's what that is. I'm like, okay, thanks. Whereas I know a lot of other winemakers love to tell growers, this is what I want you to do. And I'm like, yeah, that's not your skill set. So, I'm a great believer of people stay in their lanes. Good outcomes come. I let the viticulturists do their job. We'll say we want to make this wine or this style out of this fruit. So, there's a lot of communication that goes on, but I'm not someone to go out and, tell people how to suck eggs, really. So I love what I do. Yeah. I still love what I do. And, yeah, I think we have some really good vineyards. And I was saying Tony Patterson, I had lunch with her yesterday and she did a lot of the Halliday tasting and it was lovely to hear. She said, there's not one bad wine. I was like, cool, thank you. That's a really lovely thing to hear. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a really weird thing. I don't know.
Can I tell you what I reckon it was? It was the fact that you got 27 wines in a single year with a score of 94 or higher, and 9 of those was 97 or higher. That's probably got to do with it. Yeah.
Probably. And look, I look back and I go, maybe it was all of, the stars aligning. I got all my ducks in a row, but 22 was a really good year. I think for certain reds in the Hunter and whites, and then some of those 23 whites are beautiful. And so I guess I was lucky, I wouldn't think they probably would have given it to me, in a wet year like 16 out of the Hunter or something. Yeah. So it's a bit of that, the stars aligning and getting all those in. But I think the vineyards we take from, I've now taken from for years and years and years. And so you learn where they can fit in and what you need to do to get the best out of them. And, so.
Sam Rumpert just said, we were just speaking to him, he quoted you and he said something to the effect of, there is no bad year. It's up to the winemaker to make good wine.
Yeah. I think over the years, I've realised if you watch our show results, when I say I think Annabelle and I do better in a tough year because we don't give up. I think I could tell you in my 20 plus years of winemaking, I've rejected fruit twice. I don't think if it's your vineyard and you're buying, because we don't actually own our own vineyards, we run a lot of them now, but we still buy a lot of fruit from growers and one of my pet hates is young winemakers who go, oh, that's a bit rotten and I'm not going to take it. And I think, oh, that's someone's livelihood, so I'm a bit like, you just work harder. You just get in there and you get it off when you can and you do your job and you make the best wine you can. I think saying, oh, it's just not quite right is a bit of a cop-out, and it's not fair to the grower. It's not fair to that person who has given up or financially, in that really tough position, which our industry is in at the moment. And so, I'll go with Sam, but I do. I think you just work harder and you just get smarter.
I feel like that's kind of a guiding principle, just seeing the body of work that you've done, working hard and making it happen is really something that shines through.
And I think too, I came out of the McGuigan camp, Brian was a tough boss and there wasn't always beautiful fruit, but you were never afforded an excuse. That was never something where you said, oh, well, the fruit wasn't up to scratch or I just didn't want to, if you met Brian McGuigan, that's not something you would say to Brian. So, I think that's always stuck with me, and I do. I love our growers, and I don't think any of them are they're not going out there buying $250,000 motor cars at the moment. And so I suggest that
let's support them.
Let's support them. Yeah. And some young winemakers need to take that responsibility and have a go. And it is really rewarding when you go, that wasn't so great, but hey, we made a really lovely wine over here, and it might have just taken you a bit more hard work.
I think that's a lesson of life as well, right? When it gets tough, the cream comes to the top, right?
Just keep, and sometimes, I always think it is just one little foot in front of the other, but, try.
But it's probably a good segue into trying some of Silkman wine. And so let me hold this up to the camera. It's the 2023 Blackberry Semillon, which was the Semillon of the year as well.
Yes, sure.
Any stories, tasting notes about this?
I have a lot of stories about this vineyard because this will be the 24 will be the 21st year that I've made it. So 21 years I've made this wine because it was a Tempest 2 vineyard in 03. And then I've made it every year. And I had to say the other day, I said, when I left Tempest 2, it sort of came with me. And someone said to me, how did it come with you? And I was like, well, I was very lucky in that at the time Brian McGuigan was running it. And so I've always loved it. And yeah, I guess it's just come with me and we've always bought it. Now we're running it and we have for the last 5, 6 years. It's a little dry grown site that sits between Tyrrells and Deulius there, and it was a Tyrrells vineyard for a little while, but has this great history that it was planted by Don Francois' girlfriend. So he didn't have enough Semillon and Chardonnay. So it got planted and then he would take that fruit. Obviously where it sits, it was a Tyrrells vineyard for a while. But I still remember the day Sarah Kate came running back into the winery at Tempest saying, I found us a Semillon vineyard. And I was like, woohoo, like this is great. And yeah, it's a really distinctive vineyard. One, it is dry grown, which a lot of vineyards these days are not. Tyrrells have a lot, but most other people have irrigation, and I think they are putting irrigation through. And yeah, it's just, you can nearly pick it in a lineup. If you know it, it's got a really distinct, not herbal's not the right word, but it gets this slight lantananess into it in some years, but it's the fineness and the elegance of this wine. We make a lot of different Semillons from lots of different patches in the Hunter, and Blackberry is always the most linear and fine out of all of them. So it is just, it has these enormous bunches, so that skin to juice ratio is pretty fabulous. And yeah, I think now it's my favourite vineyard. And as I said, you can't make something for 20 years and not love it. So, and it was lovely to see it then get up as the Sem. Yeah, so that was like
Blackberry vineyard. Did it used to be Blackberry? Or
no, it's not. And everyone says to me, oh, so they're blackberries. I'm like, no, I actually don't know why. That I can't find out. I don't know why it got called Blackberry. It is. Yeah, it sits between this creek bed and it has the most beautiful bluebirds in it. And like Lizzie Riley, sometimes she'll post, if you follow her, and she'll just post the sounds because it is stunning. Like you go, and it's cooler in there. It's like this little, cool little spot. So, and it makes great Sem.
For me, this Sem is, a good one is really good to drink young and also as it ages as well. And this is really good to drink now. And you kind of said about fineness. It's like porcelain to me. It's like,
yes, it's really good. Yeah, exactly. And it ages really. So we still have a bit of the 14. We didn't do one in 13 when Silkman first started. We just made, I guess we started out and we were like, let's make 3 wines. So we just made like one Semillon, one Chardonnay and a Shiraz Pinot. But in 14 we did the single vineyard Blackberry and so it's lovely to see, what it does over time. And
I'm going to continue to embarrass you a bit more. I feel like with the, in terms of like winemaker of the year, I was looking back to a quote like 5 years ago where Greg said, Liz is one of the greatest winemakers in Australia.
Oh, gee, Greg.
so I felt like he already saw that in you. And
I don't know. Sure. Okay. I don't know. I think when I came, I had such different ideas than the previous winemaker who was here before me. And it was very much a learning curve of going, obviously we make a lot of other people's wines as well. So that was probably the steepest learning curve I had to have. I treat everybody's wines that we make like I treat my own. So it's not that I say, oh, well, I'll only concentrate on Silkman or First Creek. I care about all of them because I would be mortified if I was somewhere and someone said, oh, who made that? And it was me. I'd be like, oh my God, that would be, terrible, I think. And so clients can have their choices, but we give them the best that we can and we make sure that the fruit that they give us, we give as much respect to as we can. So, yeah, I think that and a lot of people do go, oh, it's just, maybe it's just a contract thing. It's like, no, they're just as important. Like you go and talk to that grower and you go and talk to that, owner and they love that one. So we have to do our best. And yeah, and our boys on all the way through from when we take the fruit in to when we send it to bottle to when we bottle it. That's the theory. That's what we go with.
You're saying before there's 26, contracts.
I have 26 other clients.
How do you split your time?
Some are big. One of them is Tulloch, so we make for Christina and Jay Tulloch, and they are the most respectful clients. Then when it comes to, they sort of hand over their fruit and say, here's our styles, you girls go for your life, and we give them back, the best wine that we can with the fruit that comes, and we love it. Like Jay's 81, you say that now, and I love when he comes in because he's always like, "No, what gossip you got, Liz?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, what do we know? What's happened?" And because it's always in the hunter when there's a shuffle of jobs, you see the domino effect of who's going where or what's happening, and so it's lovely. And the stories he tells, they're the sort of the thing that he talks about, like the 70s, and they weren't great vintages in the 70s, and it's like, what happened to that one? And some of it got sprayed on the road. I'm like, wow, okay. But he's really honest about that medium-bodied style, and it's what Tulloch's, and we love to do their reds because they don't try to make anything but Hunter Valley style, and that's really lovely.
One of the other quotes from Greg was said that you're able to pick the fruit at the right time to have the balance of fruit acid and sugar, and it has that kind of acid and length and sweetness line of flavour. Yeah,
definitely picking decision to me is one of your biggest decisions you're going to make, and if not the biggest decision you'll make. So yes, I spend a lot of time, and that's when I was, Annabelle holds the fort here and runs the winery, and in those January and February, I spend a lot of time on the road in vineyards. And I do that really early in the morning because I am a pasty whitey who does not like getting out in the heat. So I do that very early in the morning. And I think those picking decisions, and that's a bit about taking vineyards that you know and taking them for so long, is you do understand them. They show patterns, and they do things that you can go, okay, well, right, we're not ready yet, but we'll be ready in a couple of days, or, so new vineyards are probably the most nerve-wracking for me because you just don't know what they're going to do. But once you get them under your belt, you can, get going. So, yeah.
It's like a first date is what I'm imagining.
It really is.
You don't know what you're going to go. You're going to walk out 5 minutes later. Or...
Are you going to escape to the toilet or not?
That's right. That's right. So we might try the next wine then. So, again... 2023 Gruner Veltliner from Silkman's.
Yes. So Gruner, it's the only Gruner vineyard in the Hunter. I sound like I'm part of the McGuigan family when you line these wines up, because this was it was actually Lisa McGuigan's brainchild. She wanted Gruner in the Hunter, and she obviously said to her dad, I want Gruner, and Brian's like, okay, we'll graft it. And it's grafted onto an old Semillon vineyard up on Hermitage Road, and I love it. I love the style of wine that it wants to make, and it does want to make it because it's this crazy vineyard that it doesn't ripen that quickly. It throws a pretty good crop, which makes the accountants happy, but I quite like that. It just has this pithiness in it. It has this textural character, and to me, it actually holds its acid. It holds its acid in the Hunter, which is something we chase because the warmer climate, we want to keep as much of that acids in as we can. And I really enjoy it as a style of wine. And, yesterday I was in Sydney and they were saying, Gruner. I'm like, I know. And I was doing a tasting. We'd get distributed with Jovel, which is the same as Lark Hill, and they've got their Gruner, which is so complex and intense and really different. But I don't know, I'm a great believer that there's space for everybody and there's space for every style. And so we have that more aromatic and leaner, style, and theirs has that. But I think there's a place for both. And it's probably what I love about the industry is that they all don't and they should not all look the same. I think that's lovely.
I really like that. And typically I'm having like a off-dry Gruner or something like that.
Yes, yeah.
So if this has got just this lovely acidity that's just keep on going and going.
Yeah, because obviously first time ever having like a Hunter
Gruner.
Yes,
exactly.
And when I think Gruner, I think, that kind of like aromatic ginger thing coming through, and not getting that. It feels like this is Hunter Gruner.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
it's very Semillon-like kind of Gruner.
It is. It's really fine, and it's just that bit compared. I guess when we think about when making and picking, it's got just a bit more textural weight in it. But yes, it is much finer.
Does this reflect your style?
Yeah, I think it does.
And how would you describe Silkman's style of wine?
Fresh and elegant.
Yes.
And I agree, and that's what I like. And over the years, because I guess we make so many wines, for Silkman, the reasoning behind Silkman was to not have to talk to anybody and to not have to consult with anybody except for Sean. And so it was to have a wine that brought a bit of freedom, that brought that freedom to say, this is what I like, this is what I drink, this is what I think wine should look like. And I want to bottle that. I don't want to have to talk to anybody else. And Sean and I taste really similar. Like there is rarely a wine that I would go, oh, that's fabulous, and he's got his nose, scrunched up. So that's easier. That's lovely that we're both on the same page with wines. And so Silkman was that we could just do what we wanted. And it was a bit of that,
feels like
freedom.
A playground.
It is. It really was, because the Chardonnay that we started making for Silkman that sort of took off and gave us a bit of a name was so not Hunter Valley style Chardonnay, but it was what we liked. It was what Sean and I wanted to drink. And yes, and then, you put Annabelle, who's one of the best winemakers in my opinion in the country, and you put us all on a bench together and we taste the same. It's quite uncanny, which is always a bit awkward when you throw someone new into our mix. Like we get another winemaker or we get another assistant, and part of me always feels sorry for them because it'll be like, A, and they might be C, and it's like, no. We let them stay and we teach them up, but it's always that moment of going, I'm sure they think, do these guys all like communicate in some other way? And it's like, no. So but back to the idea behind them is wines that I like to drink, and I like to drink pure, elegant, fruit driven. I want to see the fruit. I don't want to see how skillful you are at making dirty lees and putting it back in. I don't want to see that you can wax something with so much oak that I'm questioning what the fruit looks like or what are the flavours of it apart from, oak or lees or artifact and things like that. So, for me, it's about finding the right vineyard, picking at the right time, and just maybe then being a little lazy, if you could say.
So this started off as a side hustle in 2013, so 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Did you have that clear vision back then? No. Or in terms of what you're talking about now, has that developed?
No, the clear vision at the time to make wines that we wanted to drink ourselves was really clear. The vision to make it more than a side hustle, probably not. And Sean and I hold rather large jobs in this big First Creek beast that I call it. And so Silkman sort of did sit for a long time just on the side, ticking along. We'd make little bits and we'd bottle it and people would buy it and, and then I won Winemaker of the Year. And the day they rang and they said to me, they originally said, you've won Best Sam. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. And they're like, oh, we've got something else. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. And they're like, well, and I'm like, I remember I was standing right here. I was like, oh, no, I would have got it. Because I was like, I don't have a website and I don't have anything to do with it. And I always say, I'm obviously pretty good at making wine, but I'm bad at everything else. And everyone who knows me will be like, I called you 5 times. I'm like, yes, I know you did. And I will get back to you. I just maybe have other things to. So it was this moment of going, oh no, what are we going to do? So we hired.
It wasn't, I'm excited. Let's celebrate. It was fear. Oh my!
It was fear.
About time.
It was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to get myself organised. And so that was quite a moment of going, right, well, I need to now. So we hired a fabulous lady, Kylie White, who does, and And I love her because if you've met her, she's very like, right. And she'll be like, okay, you've got 2 days and here's your list of things and you must get it clear. I'm like, see, I work well with that. I'm great on a list. Tick it off, so yeah.
I kind of feel like the achievements and all of the accolades are fantastic. You said it right at the start. You actually weren't striving for that.
No.
And to me, for someone to sustain that quality and that excellence for so long, there's something underlying that's driving you. What is that? Well, you wake up every day and what's the goal that you're trying to get to?
To make the best one that I can. Yeah. I think people who maybe strive for the accolades don't ever get there and you'd burn out. I've always said to, myself and clients and winemakers who've worked with me, especially show results, like wine show results, they come and go and some you win and some you lose and some you can win in one show and you'll get nothing in another show. And that's nothing against the judging. I actually wholeheartedly believe that's actually quite a nice part of the whole system is that you put a different group of judges together and they'll find a different wine. And as a judge, I think that's a lovely thing. So I'm not one of those that goes, there must be I'm like, well, there is consistency to a point. But the reason, the continued is probably run on a lot of fear that I would not make a good wine. Like I would hate to make a wine that people went, oh, wow, that's a bit gross, isn't it? Like that would be mortifying to me. I have an idea in my head about what wines should look like and I do my best to make them look like that.
Yeah.
And I also love my crew. Like I have to say, if it was run one thing, why do you come to work? We laugh all the time. As a workplace, I have to say there is rarely a day where there's not a good belly laugh. And now look, it could be at the expense of one of us. Like there's
part of it.
There's a bit of that sort of like we're going to laugh at each other. But we're a really good crew. And I think it shows then in the wines because if Annabelle is the most particular person you'll ever meet in your life. I'm not. I'm that bigger picture thing, whereas she's very
detailed.
I was going to use another
word.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, it's very much. We probably both are in different ways. I'm just a bit more, it'll be right, we'll get there,
Optimist.
Yeah, whereas she's like, no, we'll get there. Right? We will. And I'm like, sometimes it's like, okay. And and then we have like Nathan, who's been with us for 10 years. Nathan's like one of the best winemakers when it comes to oak and just the attention to detail about that. And that helps. Like I say to them, I can make the picking decisions and I can, tell you what oak it's going to go into and I can tell you when we're going to do something to it or whatever. But to have a crew that you trust so much to carry all that out and have every bit of faith in them and every bit of faith if I'm not here, then it'll still be done. And so I think it's to come to work. I think, we have a pretty fab group of people that work here. So, and it helps. If you don't like people you work with, it's a pretty long day.
Yeah, you kind of want to leave straight away.
Well, you do.
I don't know. I get really great leadership qualities coming out from you. and I was so curious where that was coming from and so forth. But I think you had
I was exactly thinking that because I think about like corporate life. There's a quote where culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I feel like you've got that really good culture now where...
Yeah, and I have to say it's not always the way, but, we've had people come and people go and, we're a big facility really. And so, and some people now we look back and we go, okay, well, it's better that they're not here. And we're all now a bit like, but people bring their own thing. And I think sometimes when someone comes into your group that doesn't meld or work I have watched over the years how tight that makes the core group, how they'll shift and move and go, no, you won't break us. Like we will stick together and we'll stick together even tighter. And I always find that interesting in vintage. You get someone in and you think they're going to be great and maybe not. So I think culture, and especially in a contract facility, like we are at the mercy of a lot of people wanting to put blame to, like, oh, my wine didn't come in looking like that. Well, yes, it did. Yes, it did, and they're probably not my great days because we have, chain of command and, it goes up the chain. Once it gets to me, it's probably, not a great day where I have to step in and have those conversations. But the great thing is I trust the team so much. Like we bottle some of the best wines in the Hunter Valley. We bottle Tyrrells and we bottle Brokenwood. And so they're very pressurised days when you've got certain iconic wines coming in. But again, I say the wine that they are treated exactly the same as everybody else's.
It's a great set of core values.
Oh, thank you.
I'm just getting lost in what you're saying. I really respect your leadership style and how you bring the team across. And so we're on to number 3 here.
Chardonnay.
The 2023 Reserve Chardonnay. And when we were talking to Chris, he was talking about how fantastic your Chardonnay is.
Who was, sorry?
Chris Tyrrell.
Oh, yes. He's one of my favourites. He messaged me this morning. He's like, when are we going for lunch? I was like, oh, okay, sure. Whenever you'd like to, Chris Tyrrell.
I read somewhere you've got the title, the Queen of Hunter Chardonnay.
It's a bit weird, isn't it? Yes. I love Chardonnay. If someone said, what do you drink in your house? We drink Chardonnay. And we drink lots of different Chardonnay. But it is always Chardonnay, which is very boring sometimes, I do think. Someone said to me once, what do you know about Greek wine? And I felt so ignorant. I was like, nothing. I'm sorry. I've got zero knowledge. Ask me about Chardonnay and I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
And
which goes back to you and staying in your lane. Like,
I sort of know what I like. Yes. And I do feel sometimes I should broaden my drinking. But so Chardonnay was really the thing that put Silkman on the map a little bit. We did really well in our second year where we got the Chardonnay Challenge, which was pretty cool. And Philip Rich tells this lovely story. He was the chairman and the results came out and he's like, who is Silkman? He's like, so he went around and asked, he said to Sam Connew, Sam, who is Silkman? She goes, oh no, it's Lizzie Jackson, because I'd had my whole career under my maiden name and they're like, oh, okay, all right, that's fine then. Because there's always your fear as a judge that you've put up some obscure wine that, so we did that in 15 and have sort of kept going, I think, with Chardonnay. And I love that Chris says that because they are, they are Tyrrells. But we make such a different style. And we just make, I guess if I had to say what it is, it's just a bit leaner. Was never a great fan of the big Hunter Valley style. I'm not a great fan of highly alcoholic wines. I probably just can't handle them myself. So I'm a bit like, couldn't drink more than a glass of that. So I'm a great believer that you don't have to have high alcohol, especially in white wines. So we pick ours probably a good Beaume and a half less than most people in the Hunter. And just try and keep it as restrained as we can. I don't want it to be a big voluminous style of wine. I know a lot of people say, wines have to look like the region, and it was a criticism I heard. And I was like, do they? Well, who says that's what the region looks like? Who makes that decision? Because I didn't. And I don't think that's...
There's no tablet of stone that's written it.
No, you must, like I know if you're in Burgundy, you have to have, but we in Australia get to do what we have a bit more of a flexible and it does well for us. I think people like a leaner, more fruit-driven, food-friendly wine. And that's what I think about when we're looking at our Chardies, is to keep that, finer edge to them rather than a bigger style.
Yeah. So this is reserve. Is it reserve because it's in oak for a bit longer? Or?
So they're all in oak at the same time. So we have the reserve and the estate range. It's just all barrel selection. So this is anywhere from 30 to 40% new, whereas the estate would come in some of the older barrels that we have. So Nathy, who does all our oak, he says to me, you're such a hoarder. Will you please cull your white oak? I'm like, no, I'm not going to. I'm going to keep it forever because I think good old white oak has such value in Chardonnay. So some of the best barrels, when we line them all up, can be an older barrel, and that's just a credit to how Nathy looks after them, I think. I really do think that there is a place for this style in the Hunter. I don't think it's a matter of saying that we're trying to chase the Yarra or the Adelaide Hills, because to me it's about the fruit. And what I love in Hunter Shardy is that the fruit is always in abundance, whether it's 11 Beaumay or 12 Beaumay or whether it's 14 Beaumay, the fruit is so abundant, and that's what we get from that warmer, whatever clones. This is I10V1. We do chase now. I love the 95 clone, which we learnt, sadly, when I guess the Yarra had to do all that replanting and they were working out what clones were good. And so Lizzie Riley was a bit like 95, so we've sort of chased a bit of 95 clone in the Hunter, and that works really well for us. It's to have a wine, again, we make it that we want to drink it. And earlier this week, we did all our 24 Chardonnay classification, and it's always, and then on the Tuesday we worked again. On the Wednesday I came in, I was like, just want 5 minutes of my own, and I made up the blends again. And Annabelle was like, are we good? I'm like, yeah, I reckon we're good. So it was that matter. And it was that, okay, I'd drink it. That's what I want to drink. So there we are.
I want to drink heaps of this. we had last night. We had 2 bottles of Chablis. We had a Tassie Shardy as well.
Yeah,
and this
Stargazer.
Oh yeah, nice. I do like Sam's. Yeah,
and this clearly stands out. Like, I love this.
Yeah. The fruit.
Yes.
In the Hunter, and I was saying, a lot of my early winemaking, that's why I guess early on I said, go and be a cellar hand and go and be a assistant winemaker in so many places, because when I guess I'd worked in places, but until you're the boss and the buck stops with you, you get to sort of go, oh, well, whatever, don't you? It's like, well, they made that decision, not mine. Yeah. At the end of the day, when the buck stopped with me, and I probably wasn't happy with some of her earlier styles when I came here, and I'd listened to everybody tell me that, you have got to pick them at 13 Beaumay and they've got to have pineapples and all of this. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. And I hated them. And I was like, these are not what I think are good wines. And I guess that's the privilege of drinking very good wine, is then you know that what you're making isn't even coming anywhere near them. And so I remember being on a bus in Canberra at a wine show and sitting next to Dave Bignell and talking to him and saying, just lost. Like, I don't really, what do you do? Your Chardonnays are fabulous. Like, I love Oak Ridge Chardonnays. And he's like, oh, and we're talking. And he's like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I stir. And he's like, oh, why do you stir? And I said, well, because that's what you got told. Everybody stirs, don't they? Doesn't everybody do batonnage? And he was like, nope. So it was that moment of going and then thinking about, and I think that's probably where I went, you got to think more about your wine, because the Hunter Chardonnay has this abundant fruit. So why then do you need to make it any bigger and any more blousy by barrel stirring? Like, breakdown of lees gives you, complexity and a breadth to wines. But we don't want that. I want them to keep their arms in. I want them to be as tight as and coiled as they can be. So we don't stir. We just leave them in the barrel. I got in trouble yesterday when I said, winemaking's really simple. You just sort of ferment it a bit. I saw Kylie White go, cut it out, Lizzie. I was like, okay, it's really complex. Yeah, sure. It's not. And, so it's, and over the years, I probably now watch, what we do, and it's a bit more, if there's not a thought or a reason to do it, then don't. Just don't do it and see. I think sometimes you get a better outcome from that. We are making now a Tumbarumba Shardy for First Creek from Wandalama, which is a fabulous place, and they have their own Stewie Barclay's a beautiful grower and really cares, and pristine fruit, like some of the best fruit I've ever seen. Like, talk about Instagrammable fruit. It's sort of like I rocked in one day and I'm like, oh my Lord, what is that? Like this. He's like, oh yeah, we've just handpicked and it's going off to all these amazing places. And I was just like, holy dooly, that is, as I said, like pure Instagram worthy. Like, you just wanted to.
I need to see this fruit. Like,
oh, you should. It was just, it's the picture you have in your head where you think what, fruit, whereas sometimes once fruit arrives, it's maybe not looking as pretty as it, people think it maybe should. So, and it's really different to try and make a different region. So, had to think a bit more about Malo because they have such high TAs, whereas we don't do any Malo in the Hunter because, again, why I don't want it to be any bigger. I want it to be as tight as it can. So, yeah, I think that's fun too, like to have something different all the time, to go, oh, new vineyard, it's a bit scary because you go, I'm going to stuff this or, but.
You said you don't do much towards that like low intervention type of winemaking.
Yeah, look, I think good winemaking is low intervention. I don't think this whole like new thing about we're low intervention winemakers. Yeah. Oh, I feel like I'm a bit old school and not cool enough. And I joke I don't have a beard or a hat, so I don't, I'm not really cool kid in that perspective. And I'm like, no, I think good winemaking is low intervention because all that hard work has been done in the fruit and it's been done really quite simply to get the best juice that you can into either a tank or into a barrel or into the bottle or wherever you want to shoot it to first. So I think good winemaking is low intervention. And I think I do say to, so in my younger group years ago, we had a very young crew and Annabelle, I think, had enough. And so she says, I'm putting a tasting on tomorrow. I'm like, oh, okay, sure, no worries. And it was all of this non-fined, non-filtered, low intervention. She lined it up and she's like, right, go. And they all tasted like, some of them, don't be wrong, Ravensworth, fabulous. Like some of the others, not so much. And my thing was, some of those wines there have taken more intervention than our Semillon that got gently pressed, fermented, settled, filtered and bottled. Like that's didn't do much sort of. But it's the knowledge to know when you've got to do something and the knowledge to know, well, actually I won't do anything and I'll get a better wine. And again, I go back to my first point about go and work in lots of places and learn from people and work out what are the bits I should do and what are the bits I shouldn't do sort of thing. Because I've always said, like the whole non-filtering wines, I'm not a great fan of cloudy wines. I say to my crew, don't buy me cloudy beer because I hate cloudy beer and my wines are the same. I don't want to sieve things through my teeth, people. I really don't, okay? So I just want you as the winemaker to do that for me so I can then enjoy the wine at the end of the day. But some of the most iconic wines in the world are not filtered, but they are racked with a deft hand. Like whoever does that, like when I worked in the States, they racked to bottle. They weren't cloudy. They were pristinely clean. So I think it's that as well. It's like if you're not skillful enough, become skillful. Like learn the lessons on how to go and get one of those really awesome old cellar hands who I've watched who can rack things as clear as that. Like go and learn that. Don't think you know it all before you do.
I guess you gotta have this attitude. You're always a student.
Always, aren't you? Yeah, I think you do though, and especially in wine.
I just want to say with this Chardonnay, like you said that it's
you drank it.
It's drank. It's lean, but it's also very precise. Is what I think, and I feel that. My thoughts is like it has very thoughtful use of French oak on. It's not too much, but it's
there. Yeah.
It's there, and I think that's where, to your point, like kind of knowing when to do something or not to do something.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to a blend that I've never had, a Shiraz Pinot Noir.
The Hunter blend.
Hunter. Is this the Hunter blend?
The Hunter blend.
They call the old Hunter River Burgundy, if you were allowed, but obviously we're not allowed to call it that these days. So in 2013, Sean and I started Silkman and we wanted to make a red wine like the old school Hunters. And so it's a really iconic blend from the Hunter, which started Mount Pleasant have it. They have Mount Henry, which is probably the first. But now there's a lot of producers in the Hunter that have one. There's a lot of producers in the Yarra and Orange now. We're one of the first to sort of bring it back, I guess, and make it into a wine. I wanted a wine that Sean and I said, like you go places and people pontificate about wine so much and it's like you still have to drink it. Like it still has to be a really good drink at the end of the day. And so we wanted this fruit-forward, juicy, fruit-driven, but still long and still, based on a finer tannin structure. And so that's what we sort of look for with our Shiraz Pinot. It has small amount of oak. It has carbonic. maceration. So we do the Shiraz with carbonic, but not with the Pinot, because Hunter Pinot is not like other regions' Pinot. So ours can be really tannic and quite heavy. So you should be really careful with, how it sort of all comes together. But it's such a lovely, fun thing to make sometimes. It takes a lot of thinking about what we want it to be. And it's probably the one wine where Sean and I will go, he's like, I don't know, what about more of this? Or I'm like, more Shiraz or more Pinot. So yeah, it's lovely. But there are a lot of them now. There's because it's a great blend. It sort of brings both good bits of both. And
Carbonic for the Shiraz, is that something that's done traditionally for the Hunter blend though? Or is that more?
No, I don't think it is. I know that in the Yarra, they do, because a couple of those guys do carbonic with their Pinot. Carbonic, I guess I just wanted to make a finer wine. And I think, carbonic allows you to bring out all those really cherry and, red fruited characters without getting so much of that tannin, because you've got to work it during its ferment. And yeah, I learnt more about, we used to do carbonic for years for Neil. We used to make wine for Neil McGuigan, and Neil loved carbonic. It was an old thing, and it used to break me, to be honest. It was just hard because sometimes carbonic works and sometimes it's quite a dangerous thing. And the way we were doing it was anyway. And then Sarzy Crow explained how she was doing hers, and you probably have to cut this bit out because the story's not as funny if you don't swear. And she's like, I just don't think you have the balls, honey. And I'm like, oh my God, how rude. She goes, well, you don't. And I was like, because you have to leave it and you can't touch it. So I'm a bit of I just want to see what it's looking like or what's it doing. And but when you touch it or you go into the tank, you let all the CO2, which is it's the only protective mechanism it's got. So you let that go. So she was like, there's no way, honey. And I'm like, I can. You watch me. I think I got to about 4 weeks. And I was like, I'm done. I've got to have a look. And so, yeah.
How can you tell? How do you tell?
You can taste it, so you know that it's dry.
Yeah,
but you don't know if it's fermenting nicely.
Yeah.
So you just sort of have to have this faith that it's doing its thing, and
a gamble.
It is a bit, yeah. But the way we do it, we tape down a big bag, so you can see the bag's blown up, and you have sort of an idea, but it's still very nerve-wracking to think you've put your wine into something, and you're like, okay, this should be interesting. But I remember, the first time I saw Sares is from Yarra Yering. It's my fave. I love it. Hers is Pinot Shiraz, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas we're Shiraz Pinot in the Hunter.
It's got this really unique scent. I almost feel like it's like a Turkish delight kind of scent.
It does. It's really floral, and that's a bit of that. We use a lighter edged Shiraz and through the carbonic, and then Pinot blended in. Yeah.
Juicy, fun wine. I think.
Juicy. That's right. Yeah. And that's what I feel like now you've said that, my job's done. I'm like, okay, it's juicy and it's great. Yeah. So, I mean, I think they age really well, but I didn't want a wine that it was all about the tannin and the depth and all the rest. I wanted something that was more like, because I don't, and you see it in Silkman's wines, I don't drink really heavy wines. It's not something like I can appreciate them and I go, but whereas, I talk to my friend Gwynnie, who's at Henschke, and she loves big Cabernet. And she'd be like, I just love the tannins. Whereas I'm like, I don't know if I can get through the glass, whereas it's just that different people. Yeah. And she can really appreciate all of that. Whereas I find that I'm like, oh, okay, that's a bit more tough and hard work for me.
I feel like across the range, like it's that defined style. I think with Silkman really flows through.
Say,
and
which
it's great. It's great to have that flight. But now, you've won your award. You've done it for 11 years. Like, what's next for Silkman now?
Oh, a website. Yes. Probably to just keep it growing and to keep producing the wines that we have. And there's been some lovely opportunities come forward, maybe a little bit of export and, people now are going, oh, wow. And we've had a look at your wines and maybe they hadn't in the past. So that's really lovely to go, okay.
Yeah.
But it is just to keep doing what we do, I think.
What about stylistically though? Like people say, sometimes it's just like, you're talking about carbonic maceration, you can leave it and keep on doing the same thing. Or do you feel like I need to do something?
Oh, I don't know. No, I think the wine industry is it's never the same every year anyway. So there's always something that keeps me awake or, thinking, oh, is that going to be okay? Or did we, until it gets in the bottle and then you go, oh, okay. We did it. We've got it there and now it's safe. But then they still change. I mean, we looked at our 23s the other day and we put our 24s together. And I was swearing black and blue that I was like, that did not look like that when we put that to bottle. So wines change and evolve. So it's a lovely side of that as well. But, I don't know if we'll change much in what we do. I sort of feel like we've got into a position that I like and
I'll put something out there. Like there's a lot of talk about alternative varietals at the moment. Is that something?
Oh, for sure. More so for probably First Creek. I think First Creek has a Vermentino and a Fiano. I mean, we have the Gruner and that's probably as, alternate. Yeah. But I think alternate whites have a really cool place in the Hunter. Reds I find will take more work and maybe trying to find the right ones that fit. And that's just because of the ubiquitous rain that we know will come at some stage. So whereas with whites I feel we can get them in and get them nice and safe. Sometimes, Hunter Shiraz is such as, it just does its thing. And I think, so trying to find reds that either flick around where that rain's going to come to us and do that. So, but I do. I think it's lovely. I think that allows such a creative side is to go, okay, we've got Vermentino and Fiano and, our Fiano we put, the lees into or the pressings into barrel and we try and make a bit of a more complex style. So, I do think there is place. I think we're getting warmer. I think to say that we can just rest on our laurels and keep what we're doing, I think, again, Mother Nature's going to change that for us. I reckon things are getting earlier and earlier and we have to be really mindful of that and just keep ourselves ahead of the game like everybody else is.
And so I kind of feel like we're at the tail end of the interview. Last messages for our audience listeners. Anything you want to say about Silkman's, First Creek?
I would say that the Hunter is not the old boring place that people think we are.
Definitely, yeah.
I think we have lots of things to offer. We have lots of different styles. We have really food-friendly wines because we come with fruit first in our wines compared to other regions. So I think we are pretty cool. We don't need to be, I'm not saying we all need to go out and make a pet nap. That is not what I'm saying. I've made them. They're not much fun. But I do think that there is such a breadth in the Hunter that maybe people don't see, and especially that we are so close to Sydney and we would love more support from Sydney for our area and for our wines. And to think that you only have to have one Semillon on your wine list, which, I love Chris Tyrrell, which is usually a Tyrrell's wine. I think there's place for a couple more maybe, and I think that we don't only have to have, the push to have Chablis on every damn wine list. That's great. But we have beautiful Chardonnays in the Hunter. We have beautiful Chardonnays in Orange and we have lovely Chardonnays from the Tumbarumma region. So feel free to put some of those on the list, and do a bit of support. I don't understand. I never have that Sydney doesn't support the Hunter like Adelaide supports, all South Australia or else. Like, you go to Adelaide, you die of thirst if you want to find a Hunter Valley wine. So, in Melbourne's the same. Tell me they don't have so much Yarra, again. And so I'm always I can never understand how Sydney wine, all those wine lists and all those restaurants and bars are not championing the region that is right here and making really different styles of wine. All Semillons don't look the same. And all Chardonnays don't look the same, and all Gruners don't look the same, and all Shiraz. So this thing about, all the wines are the same and they're just a bit old and daggy and boring, I would say to some of those sommeliers, then you are being too narrow in your own drinking. So come visit, you
Yeah.
know, come see us because we're not that far away.
Absolutely. 2 hours.
2
It's
hours
very
is
easy to get
all it
there.
is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Trent, did you have any last messages?
I think my last thoughts is around asking the question about what makes the kind of winemaker of the year, and through the discussion,
yeah.
for me, it's like you're like the CEO. I feel like you've got a very curious mind. You've got a very set vision and strategy in terms of what you're trying to achieve. And you know, everyone has a type of role as well. Nathan with the oak, Liz with the vineyard, and Annabelle with the winemaking as well. I feel that with that, you're able to then deliver, and culture as well, to deliver these fantastic wines. And I feel that.
Oh, that's really lovely because I have to say, I've always found it weird, well, when I get awards and I guess this guilt of going, it's not just me.
Yeah.
Like I could never, you know, I remember years ago I got a winemaker for the Hunter and my parents were there and I said, you know, the old rule about it takes a village. Like I wouldn't have this career without my mum and dad, you know, like I broke my ankle at Brokenwood in the early days and my dad got up every morning and helped me put my boots on, you know, and I think I would never have kept going. It does take a village. So I always get a bit guilty when I'm like, just won this award and I wouldn't be there without, you know, definitely not without Sean. He's the greatest support that I have. And then, you know, Annabelle, I say, is, you know, the guilt that she's not right there at the forefront, but she hates this sort of stuff. And she's the most gorgeous, tall, leggy blonde, so I've never understood why. I'm like, go on, you go do that, you know? Like, so, but no, it's a team. It's definitely a team.
There's such a sense of humility whenever you speak. It's really interesting. Look, for me, it's been a real pleasure to meet you and to taste these wines. And I kind of feel like listening to you and thinking about your chief winemaker for First Creek, you're running Silkman's with your husband, Sean, you're doing the contracting business, you're looking after the team, you got a family.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got to do better. Don't you got?
I know.
I got a bit of inspiration. I'm like, wow.
I'm going home to lie on the couch.
Well, because you've been doing so much, but it kind of goes to show that if you're really into wanting the best, in this instance, you want to create the best wines, then it's not really a job to do it. You're kind of just working on your passion, which is super exciting. Yeah. Other things for me is Silkman Wines. I think everyone in Sydney, everyone across Australia, everyone in the world, bloody go out and try these. The entire range that we've tasted today has been fantastic. And it's got a very distinct style. I also think the word you said was porcelain, kind of fine and elegant, but structured as well. And that resonates with me across the entire range here. So very delicious wines.
Thank you. Thanks.
Liz, thanks so much for hosting us and spending the time to talk us through your story and share these wines.
Thanks for coming.
No worries. That's us at The Wind Up. As we like to say here, drink more, try more, learn more. Thanks all.